Being happy in an unhappy world. Kind of a cryptic title for a podcast and YouTube channel, but today I'm going to bring on Dr. Mary Mitchell. She and I spoke on the phone a number of times about this episode. She's got some really unique, I think, ways of looking at life, and I felt that it would be really helpful to kind of remind everybody, what it is that we are here for in life. You guys deal sometimes in an unhappy world, but it's all about choices that you make. So here's one of those episodes that is just a reminder as to what we have, what's in front of us, and what we should be striving for, as opposed to looking at all the negativity. Should be a good one, I hope so, on this week's edition of Travel Evolved. This is Travel Evolved. Welcome to the episode, everybody. I am super excited today to have Dr. Mary Mitchell join us. We're going to talk about, being happy in an unhappy world. She's got some really great stories to tell. She's an ordained minister. Her history is actually from she worked in the lumber industry for most of her career. But when she and I were talking, I said this is going to be a good episode because there's a lot of stuff there with her. When I talked to her, and we've been talking quite a bit lately, I never know where the subject's going to go. And everything that she talks about, she just has a wonderful way and unique way of looking at our lives and life in general. Her biggest philosophy is that, to choose to be happy in an unhappy world goes with everything. Mostly what she looks at and talks about is when dealing with other people, and you guys certainly do, whether it's another traveler, a staff member, patient family. She says that people are doing the best that they can in that situation for the moment that you're dealing with them at. And she says she uses that a lot to judge everything. It's no different than having, that emotional intelligence that I always talk about. It's just a different way of talking about it. I use emotional intelligence and talk about that all the time. It's the same kind of thing. You're dealing with somebody and you're looking at them saying, they're doing the best they can. And it allows you for some compassion, some empathy, and I hope that we get the chance to touch on that today. There's so much there for you guys. And again, on today's episode, I just really wanted to have one of those reminder things, because I think every once in a while we focus so much on money and location and the things that I know are important to you. But I do like to round this show, I never know what to call this, with some things that I just think make you go, and start to think. I wish people did that in my world. I'd love to find a podcast that's for people that do what I do, that helps you kind of stay focused and appreciate the opportunities that we all have. And in talking to Mary over the last few weeks, setting this interview up, there's definitely been some moments where I'm kind of like, I need to really pay attention to my head and the way that I'm dealing with things. So. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the increased subscriptions. I know we've been talking about some edgy stuff lately, even last week. We're really throwing some things out there because I think it's time. This series has been going on for a year and a half. It'll be 2 years here, in about 4 or 5 months. And we're starting to get into some of the really heavy meat and potatoes of why my team and I really wanted to create this series. We, like I've always said, feel that the more educated a traveler is, the more knowledgeable they have. I think it's better for the industry, and I think it's better for companies like mine and many other companies that are doing their best to move the industry in a positive direction. I think it's also going to be bad for companies that aren't doing that. Companies that are in it for the money, that are in it just to get their carving out of that piece of the pie, and don't have that compassion, don't have that understanding for what we do and what you guys do. It's going to fix everything. The more people that really understand the full circle of what it is to take a healthcare career on the road and travel with it and walk into a facility potentially every 13 weeks or even shorter, is going to help the industry. So we're going to continue on that. And it's time now, as you guys can tell by some of the episodes that we're doing, to start to turn that up a notch and really get into some meat and potatoes. So like I've always said, if this is the first episode or if the last couple of weeks you just started joining us, I would really urge you guys to go back and start from the beginning. And, again, you can download these. You can listen to them on the way to an assignment. You can pull them in and listen to them while you're on a day off or while you're exercising or walking. I hope that there's something in there for everyone. This episode today, Mary and I talked a lot about this, that we hope that somebody out there is going to go, that's for me, and it helps them. That's oftentimes my end result or my goal in a lot of episodes for whether it's numbers and things that I'm, decently knowledgeable about, to things like today. And I see Mary's on there, just joining us in agreement where when she's talking about some things that she's an expert on. I hope that this is eye-opening, that somebody has a better day, has a better week, has a better, rest of their lives because they started focusing and changing their attitude about how do I stay happy and focused. And like I've said many times, I feel right now that things are really tough in our world. I don't think that I'm unique. I think that people 20 years ago, people 40 years ago, people 100 years ago felt the same way as we all do now. We all feel, I've heard it out there, many of us feel that, right now things are just tumultuous and things are tough and things are bitter and there's so much anger. I don't know if that's unique. It feels unique to me, but in the history of mankind, it probably isn't that unique. So let's talk and focus about how we can get a positive head and be happy in an unhappy world. And even if the world isn't happy, what if we could change our head mindset to always looking at things and either engaging in the positivity or just choosing not to engage in someone that wants to seek you out and be negative. It just doesn't make sense this day and age. So, again, thank you guys for the increased subscriptions. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to both YouTube and our podcast. I am starting to see some people out there sharing some of our information. I was on, was on Facebook. I don't remember what group it is, and I don't know if I'd even be wanting to give them a plug because sometimes people get upset about that. But there was a group that someone had asked a question about. I'm going to forget this right now. Oh, it was about orientation. It was about not being paid for orientation. And we just had that episode maybe a month ago. I can't remember, pretty recently. And somebody had plugged in that episode and said, here, this explains it to you. It didn't answer the question because the person said, how come I'm not getting paid for orientation? So I love seeing things like that where it tells me, wow, people are actually paying attention to what we're doing. Somebody heard it. And now potentially a handful of more people are going to look at that and listen to that episode and go, okay, I kind of get it, which was the intention of that episode. Today, it's really all about you guys. This is about mindset. I've said many times, I understand as a person that was on the road for the first 3 years of this career of mine. I was barely home. It was a tough time for me. And I understand that aspect of it. I understand the loneliness. I understand the amount of time you spend wondering if what you're doing makes sense and all the different things you guys probably go through. I can't be specific on what you guys are dealing with, but there's some similarities there. So I have some empathy toward that. And I think an episode like today with Dr. Mitchell is going to really kind of show some ways to look at things differently when you're having those tough days or having those tough moments or even a tough assignment, which we've talked about before. When that happens, maybe go back and re-listen to this episode. There's a lot that I hope that she says. Every time I talk to her on the phone, there's some cool stuff. So I'm going to pull her up because I want to get her going. We're recording this on a weekend, and there's a lot of she's in California, so I'm here in Colorado right now. Excuse me. So it's pretty early, but she's up early-ish all the time. So I want to get her on, and I think she's ready. She's given me we're ready. So let me bring on Dr. Mary Mitchell, excuse me, and let's talk about being happy in an unhappy world. Hey, Mary, how are you this morning?
Good morning. Just fantastic. We've had rain here in California that we haven't had for months, so
I've heard
everybody's
that.
enjoyed.
Now you're up in tell me what the town of your city. Well, maybe you don't want to tell me the viewers, but my daughter goes to school out there, and she's in Orange County,
Okay.
and there has been some unusual rain down there, which she hates. I'm going, boy, what a spoiled. You live in
Oh,
California, you get pretty spoiled, but you don't see sunshine every day.
right,
So,
right.
well, I love your state. I get to spend some time out there because we have an office out there too, so I love it. But
Yeah.
well, thanks for joining us today. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We're way up north, up by Mount Shasta, 3 hours.
Yeah, so it must just be the
It's
the whole
beautiful.
band, right?
Hmm.
Well, enjoy the wetness while you get it. I think it's probably over for a while. It's supposed to be a weird winter. I heard there's a lot of precipitation all over the place. So, well, thanks for joining us today. You and I had a lot of chances to talk, and we did kind of we always like to do a pre-interview, and I'm really excited to have you on because, like you and I talked about, if we hit one person, if there's one person out there that needs to hear from you on this episode, you and I both said that's going to be a success. And what we love about YouTubes and podcasts nowadays is that they last. It's not just like a television event where here it is and then it's over. This could help somebody years down the road. We hope so. And I was really excited to have you on board because we're going to talk about being happy in an unhappy world, obviously. But let's give our listeners and our watchers just a little bit of a background, if you wouldn't mind. Just kind of tell us, who you are and kind of all the accolades you have, and I know you don't like to, but let's start with that. So tell us
Well,
about Mary Mitchell.
well, one of the fun things that people don't expect is that I have a degree in sawmill management from Ohio State University. And I
That's right.
love the timber industry. And as soon as I graduated, I got a job in Puget Sound working for pulp and paper mills, negotiating contracts with sawmills. It was mainly negotiating contracts, so I got pretty good at it. And then I had a very, very difficult boss when they sold the pulp mill and they hired this tyrant. And he was really hard to work with. And then my husband had an affair with a college student. And so I thought, okay, I got to get out of this place. we'd been, I know, we've been married 21 years. So I heard of a job in California working for a wood-fired power plant, negotiating contracts with sawmills for wood waste to burn to make power. And they interviewed me for 7 hours in LA, and I got the job. And that power plant started in 6 months, and I had to have 100 semi truckloads of wood a day, 7 days a week, to run the power plant.
Wow.
100 semi truckloads a day. Anyway, I did it, and it was really great.
Oh my
And during
goodness.
that time, uh, I really learned more about the power of positive thinking, the power of our mind. And it really started when I was a teenager because when I was 10, my father died. And my mother was so positive. I mean, extraordinarily positive. She never let my brother and I think that there was any hardship or anything going on. And so when I was 16, I found this book, The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, and I thought, that's my mother. And so I read it and read it and read it and embodied those principles in my life. And I've been very successful in my career. Now I'm retired and I'm writing full time and having a good time on podcast doing this. But it helps so much if you realize that, number one, if you're unhappy, usually it's about other people. And I know you have a lot of traveling medical people, and they run into people they don't like or don't care for or whatever. The number one thing I learned is that everyone is doing the best they can in every moment, no matter how bad it looks. That's the best they can do. In their emotional world, in their physical world, it's the best they can do. So what that does is it brings up compassion. Because, when we don't like what they're doing, you can't change it because they're doing the best they can do.
That's
And so
interesting.
I ended up in this philosophy called the science of mind, the power of positive thinking. And I ended up getting ministerial license and being a staff minister at our church. And then some prisoners started finding me because I was writing magazine articles for many years on the power of the mind. This one prisoner and I just recently published a book of our letters We've been corresponding 13 years, and I typed up all of our letters, and he went from a very dangerous gangster to what I call a prison Buddha today. And he has come so far, and yet a year ago, January, there was a riot at his prison. For who knows why? That I read the newspapers, and they said it was because they cut down on the number of guards, and so illegal things started happening. And during the prison riot, his arm was broken in 2 places, and your nurses will love this. And they said, here's some Tylenol, drink lots of water, and they put him in the hole for a year. A year.
Did they ever
And I
mend his
think
arm?
that's awesome. Yeah, and they gave him he used his socks to kind of stabilize his arm. So after a few months, he was able to start working out again and doing his push-ups and all that. And when he got out of the hole, I said, Michael, how did you do this? And he wrote me his top 10 tips. And the Marshall Project, which is a prison advocacy organization, published it in their newsletter a couple weeks ago. Because it takes a really strong person, just like it takes a real strong medical person when you're traveling and you go home alone every night. And you can either handle it in a creative way or become depressed with it.
Yeah.
So in his top 10 tips, it's really great because he says, don't let the time do you. You do the time. You choose what you're going to do. You choose every day how you're going to be productive. And then exercising, because you don't know technically how long you'll be there, especially if you're not comfortable with the situation. And then he said, read everything. He's quite intellectual. He even read the dictionary for months just to help improve his understanding of language. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then learn new things. And here's what he said was so amazing to him. He was right-handed. So he started writing everything with his left hand. And after a few months, he did really good with both. But he said the inspiration and the amazing upliftment he felt from doing that, from accomplishing that, was greater than he ever imagined. Now, I would have never thought to do that. I have no interest in doing that, but at least it was something creative.
He was in a position where, something little like that to us would be like, that monotonous and there's no need. It was a big deal to him because it was what he had. It was what he had to be creative and to try to push himself, sounds like.
Well, when you're in a 7x9 cell, 23 hours a day, and anytime they take you out of it to go to the cafeteria or anything, they put shackles on your legs, and then you get 1 hour of time in the yard. So it takes a lot of mental strength to handle that. And he said, stay out of frivolous conversations with people, because it only leads to arguments. And
Right.
in this in this midterm election year, there's a lot of arguments going on in the world.
Sure is.
And then I'm glad it's almost over.
I think we
And then
all
he
are as a
said,
country.
and he said, don't let the correctional officers draw you out, because they usually have an agenda. And you could exchange that correctional officers with supervisors or managers or whatever. And if you respond to them in a negative way and you're in jail, they can say, okay, 30 more days in the hole. And so you have to be really careful to do that. And then always leave the cell whenever possible, because he said there's a thing called cell anxiety, where you don't want to leave the cell, even if they allow you to, because you think the guards are going to come in and ruffle through everything and take your stuff, and they will. But if you can just be confident and walk out of that cell in confidence, they're not going to come in because there's nothing there that you're worried about. So I thought that was another interesting.
It is.
Write letters to your loved ones and friends. Keep that communication open. And this is interesting. File grievances on any issue you think needs to be changed, because they hate that. The administration hates that. And he said, if you're a prisoner and you don't file grievances, they're glad that you're happy. And so it's important to file a grievance. And then there are times when they get tired of you that they will transfer you to another prison. And then exercise your faith daily, whatever your faith is. Because it took him through in the worst of his time to do daily prayer and exercises like meditation, mindfulness. One of the hardest things for him was the guards try to always irritate them, and then the prisoners try to irritate the guards. It's a stalemate. So when I said, every guard's doing the best they can every day or they wouldn't be there. They love their work. If you're doing the best you can, maybe you can say thank you now and then. And he went, whoa, never thought of that. So it's interesting. He learned to bring more happiness into his life. One of the authors I dearly love on this subject is Raymond Charles Barker. His book is The Power of Decision. And on the first page of the book, he says, it's amazing how people make themselves so unhappy in a world of prosperity, in a world of infinite potentiality. And he believes that if you get depressed or anything, not only is it your fault because you've created it yourself, but it's lazy thinking. Now, I don't like to hear that, lazy thinking, because it's uncreative. And our mind is creative. There's this creative process going on, and it starts with our thinking. And so if we're thinking negative, 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 long enough, it goes into our subconscious mind, and that's the magnet that draws like energy to it.
Boy, do I ever believe that. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head with me on that. I just have always felt that you receive and you draw what you give out. And we've all known people that are, I mean, I said a number of things I've done on social media. I said, when's the last time you saw someone who was, very, very successful? And success, obviously, is everyone's own definition. That is unhappy. Not very often, it doesn't seem like. It seems like whatever someone's definition of success is, whether it's to be a great, father, a great business person, or just, be a happy person, they're not walking around drawing negative energy. And it's not just a philosophical thing, in my opinion. It's a real thing. If you are constantly looking for negativity, you're going to get exactly what you're asking for.
You're going to bring it on. You're going to bring it on. So I've been teaching this for over 30 years in classes, and it's interesting when people finally get it. It just changes their whole life.
Well, and let's bring it. When you were talking about this, it struck me that in my world, in our world, the people that are watching us, these men and women, I told you, and I talked on the phone, I said that these people are risk takers. They have decided, for whatever reason, every traveler has a different reason for wanting to, as I say, hit the road. But it does mean that they're leaving oftentimes the comfort and security of a permanent position, and maybe they're definitely wanting to because of whether it's cliques, politics, the way it's ran, maybe they have a nomadic lifestyle, or they're chasing money, or they're chasing the ability to be able to see, Northern California and Southern Florida all in the same year. There's a lot of risk that's involved, which means, like you said, infinite potential. And in my experiences, and I literally, in a couple weeks, I've been in this industry for 23 years, I have seen two sides of the coin of a traveler. One that just kind of feels like they're just going through it. You can just tell when I talk to them. They're unhappy. They're chasing the dollars. They're kind of, a little bit of a curmudgeon, and they're just like, everything is bad, and the hospitals are bad, and I don't like my career, which for me, unlike a lot of travelers, I do talk to people from a business standpoint, and it's real opposite the way I see a lot of these men and women that do what they do.
I agree. What I found in my life is total unexpected success. A degree in sawmill management. I was just going to be an office person or something, And when I got into the business of wood supply for pulp mills, it opened up my eye to all kinds of potential. And so I followed that. And then I found this philosophy called science of mind, metaphysics, whatever you want to call it, where it's really true. It's a creative process in our physical subconscious mind and our conscious mind. And that we can use it every day. It's just like you got to be the guardian of your mind. You got to be the guardian, because if you're not,
how does somebody do that? I mean, I guess tell our listeners. Like we said, being happy in an unhappy world. So just that point, guarding your brain, guarding your mind, guarding your thought process, making sure you're speaking positively about yourself and your environment. How does somebody start that process of changing their entire think?
Usually you have a mentor. And so I've taught these classes for over 30 years. And when I have someone that goes, that's impossible, I said, prove it to yourself. Once you prove it to yourself, it's a piece of cake. Because it's easy to get turned off about things. But if we go by the rule, everybody's doing the best they can in every moment, then we can just look at that person and have compassion. Don't have to deal with them. Don't have to hang around with them. Don't have to go to dinner with them. But you have compassion. And what that brings up in your heart is some love. Love for humanity. I mean, I look around the world and all the wars and all the horrible things going on. And if everybody's doing the best they can, it's a sad state for humanity. But we're continuing to improve. It's like I heard one time that the Taliban, they've never felt love. They've never been loved. So they don't know love. So why wouldn't you kill all your enemies? They're nothing. And so if love, I call it the background energy of the universe, if you can bring that into your heart and into your mind, you can see everything differently. And so it starts with that. Am I seeing what I think I want to see, or am I seeing reality? Or am I seeing other souls in this life challenge that are having a hard time finding their way?
That's fascinating because, again, these men and women are seeing different coworkers every 13 weeks, potentially 26 weeks. For 23 years, I've been told that oftentimes one of the biggest difficulties for a lot of, whether they're allied professionals or nurses, are family members of the patients. It's not necessarily always the patient, it's the family members who are in a real tough place. They're seeing their loved one, either deteriorating or being, treated differently. No one's used to seeing someone that they care about sick in a bed, looking different, feeling different, acting different. So oftentimes it brings out the worst in a family member sometimes for the right reasons. They're concerned, they're stressed. This is an unfamiliar territory to them, whereas let's say, for example, a nurse, it's very familiar. And I think a lot of men and women that watch us do a pretty good job. I would imagine they get used to having to learn how to say, in maybe different words, this person is doing the best they can in the unique situation for them that they're being thrust into. But I think it's a really good reminder for a traveler that's, whether it's dealing with a coworker who thinks that he or she is there only for the money and they're making all this crazy money and forget about the risk they're taking, or a family member that is just an unusual. It could be a cultural thing. Maybe there's some place in the country where there's a different culture than they're used to back home. So there's a lot there that I think a traveler, if they aren't already practicing this, it's a great reminder to, hey, don't forget who and what you're dealing with and how to handle that, and to have that empathy and that compassion like you're talking about for that individual.
About 10 years ago, when I became a minister, we had a wonderful chaplain at our local hospital, and he wanted help. And so I became his associate for 4 years. And I did on-call on the weekends. I went to ER, all the different departments. And I had so many hours a week to do that while I was working. But anyway, I remember clearly being called in because this one family was being very difficult for the nurses. Their sister was in bed and she was dying, and 8 people stood around her and refused to even consider that she was dying. So I came in as a chaplain, and I basically held a box of Kleenex for an hour just observing it. And they kept saying, come on, Kathy, come on, you can make it, you can do it, we know you can do it. And they were driving not only themselves crazy, but the person who's really making their transition. Finally, I said, what if you talked to Kathy with love and said, it's okay. We love you. Go to the next level of your soul's journey, and we love you. And they did that, and 2 minutes later she passed. So it's an interesting thing when you bring a chaplain into it. Now, not all chaplains, some are very fundamental, but I'm pretty open, and seeing every soul is on their journey, every soul.
Yeah.
One of the things I often draw for people that come to me with a problem is I take a piece of paper and I do a big S. I said, this is a superwoman S or a superman S. This is your soul. You came here to do something important. And then I draw a tail on that S. And I said, this is your journey here in this life. And then I draw a block on that tail. You came here to get beyond something so you could go on into infinity in a healthy and loving way. What might that block be? And they know. Unworthiness. I was abused as a kid. All these different excuses. And so I say, do you want to get through it this time? Or do you want to go to the next experience and take that with you? Of course, they want to get rid of it. So we work on that, and
Right.
It's a miraculous thing to watch when they realize they are a soul on a journey. And they're here to get through something so that they can go into the future in a more healthy, happy, spiritual way. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is so tough on podcasts. You get all this great information, and I want to spend an hour on every topic you and I talk about because there's a lot there. It's heavy stuff. And when we talked earlier, I said there's some heavy things here, and I was struggling trying to figure out what exactly to narrow this conversation down to because there's a lot, and especially when I can't put myself into a healthcare provider's position. I've been around them for decades now, but it's not the same thing as being there, experiencing that, being in front of a family, being in front of another healthcare professional who's having a bad day or is dumping on you, or a manager who, like you said, with your first boss, who's just inept at being in a leadership role, which these men and women deal with a lot too. There's just a lot there. There's a whole bunch there, and it sounds like it's really about reframing your mind and, like you said, creating that compassion, and then again deciding. I think it's a decision to be happy in an unhappy world. And I don't think you're saying that the world is unhappy. Like you've said that there is a lot of just an amazing infinite opportunity. Things are tough out there. I think right now, I don't know if there's a generation or a time in our history where people couldn't say this is tough. And I think in my lifetime this feels like the toughest time, but I'm sure my father would have felt like the 70s or 80s were tough times. So we're just dealing with what we're dealing with now. It's charged, like you said. There's a lot of animosity, a lot of finger pointing and positioning that we're better than you, I'm better than you, I think smarter than you, and that has to translate into everything. We did see that a year ago inside of hospitals. There's some politics that definitely made their way into healthcare, which they really shouldn't have. So again, I know that there's some listeners out there that are dealing with maybe depression, but maybe just going through the motions and just have made a decision to have this career, this lifestyle not be nearly as positive and uplifting and fulfilling as they could.
I worked as a chaplain at a crisis center for 2 years here in California, and when I see people in crisis, all I can do is just be present. Just be present. And a lack of negative energy coming from me, or a smile, or a hand, or something like that, it changes the moment. Because the present moment is all we have. We're on this razor's edge of the present moment. 8:30 was the past, 10:30 is the future, but we're right here. And all we can do is be fully present. And one of the exercises I do with students is I give them a big piece of chartboard paper. And I say, draw a big circle. And below the circle, write down what you're dragging with you from the past. That's unhappy, didn't work, all these things that we regret, blah, blah, blah. On top of the circle, draw the things you're afraid about in the future. What are you worried about in the future? Will I have enough of relationships, work, whatever? Everything you're afraid of. Now put that paper down on the floor and stand in the circle. That's the present moment. If you're dragging around the past or worrying about the future, you cannot be happy in the present moment. And that was a good visual for them. In fact, Michael, my prisoner, who's I've been corresponding with, when I wrote that to him, he said, I didn't have paper, but I had chalk, and I wrote it in my cell, and I went, oh my God, I can be in the present moment.
That's yeah. Again, a
I
lot
know.
there. I mean, that's just a
That's why I love it
that's
so
just a
much. I just love it
that's
so much.
yeah. I can understand how you enjoy what you do. It's a I think getting I try to do this on this podcast, this series, and I fail miserably at it because I'm certainly not. I don't have the education you have. I don't have the training that you have. But my concept that I've been doing for 2 years is really similar to what you're saying. But just trying to help travelers get the most out of this. What I think is an amazing decision, a remarkable opportunity that most, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of I couldn't travel and do what I do in a different setting every 13 weeks. It's a really great opportunity, and I it hurts my heart sometimes when I see that some people just don't see the gift and the opportunity they have in front of them. Many do, but there's a
Sure.
lot that lose sight of that. We all do. We all do in our
Mhm.
careers, but a lot of them also, I think, have lost the sight of what a phenomenal lifestyle and career choice they have chosen to take their medical training and their healthcare training on the road at a different facility potentially every 3 months. It's there's so much there, whether it's helping community, helping leaving that unit or that department in a better place than before you got there, the families, the community they can touch. So I beat my chest about this a lot. I don't say it nearly as eloquently, and it doesn't seem to resonate. Maybe it's just nice hearing somebody else say it in much better terms than what I do. But that's the gist. Is that again? These when I saw you and I started talking, I said this. I got to get around here because there's so much there that is hopefully eye opening to some folks, and I do hope that we are touching some people on some
You
of
know,
this.
I
The first thing that he mentioned,
that's
and
all
go ahead.
right. It's just I have total confidence in that because whatever I do, I know whatever good is going to go goes there. But I want to invite everyone to do this. Before you go to bed at night, take a piece of paper and a pen and write 5 good things that happened to you or you saw. Maybe you just saw sunshine for the first time. Maybe you just had rain for the first time. Something. Maybe you saw a child smiling. 5 things. And go to bed with that on your mind. And in the morning, I always
Yeah,
reach up and go, I am so grateful for whatever I have. Because what I have is what I created in my life. Nobody else created it, I did. And so I'm so grateful. So those two attitudes, going to bed with appreciation and feeling love and happiness, and then waking up in gratitude, it's life changing.
it's another whole thing right there. And tell me if you agree with this. I think so many people in the last, let's just say, decade have started comparing themselves to other people because of the access to social media and how everybody on social media is putting the best light of themselves forward. I mean, I do it. I'll admit it. If I'm somewhere, I'm like, oh, look at this dinner I'm having. I'm not trying to. I'm excited. This is a cool dinner. Or you look at a sunset on a beach because you're there. Whereas somebody, is, well, I really would love to go to the beach. I've been working my tail off forever. We are inundated with that, and especially younger men and women than you and I are, who are really involved in that process. It's a really dynamic change in our culture in the United States, at least, that all we do all day is look at other people appearing to have a better life than we do. And we all know in the back of our minds that person's probably no different than I am. They're dealing with who knows what in their personal life, but they're not going to show that. So I think it's hard for people, maybe more so now, because we never had access to that. We just kind of assumed you'd see somebody, but now it's all projected out there. Look how great things are for me. And I don't think people do it intentionally. Just like I said, you're showing your best light, because you want people to think you're happy and everything else. So that's all we see, which means these men and women who are working in healthcare see that stuff when they're off work, and it does tend to want to make us forget what we have, like you just said. I mean, look at the things that we have. I mean, whether what's important to you, you've worked hard and you've done it because of you, like you said. Less important when are at the twilight of your life, what it is, what things you had. Did you have love? Everybody who is at the end of their life and is fortunate enough to be at a point where they know they're at the end of their
Yeah.
life all say family, love, people that I care about. Nothing else matters. What car they drove, what kind of house they lived in, where they lived. It seems to be about, you know, those that I loved and those that loved me. It's almost across the board.
You know, when I was growing up, my dad died when I was 10. My brother and I and my mom. So she had to go to work to keep our house and keep us fed and all that. And this is in the 50s. And she was so darn positive. I mean, just so darn positive. And when I realized the power of positive thinking, I looked at life completely different. But what she always said to me is, Mary, learn typing. If you know how to type well, you'll get a job anywhere. And I'm like, typing? So I took office practice at high school, and my first job out of high school was for an insurance company, typing insurance contracts all day long, legal size. And if you made one mistake, you had to throw it away and start over.
Right.
And that paid me 90 cents an hour. And I thought I was in heaven, man. That was really great. So got married, my husband got in the Navy, and I went to work for the Navy Exchange, typing purchase orders.
She wasn't
And I
wrong.
made $1 an hour. I got a 10% increase.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled, and we just had a great life. And then coming back home afterwards, I got this job at the Slumber Company. And he was a tyrannical business owner, and I don't know, I get along with people like that. And it was an office with 15 people in it, and in a year and a half, 11 people quit and left.
Yeah.
And every time someone left, I'd go to him and I'd say, let me do that job. And so I went up and through, learned so much.
Yeah.
And then I thought, if I really want to succeed, I've got to go to college. And that was when I was 28 years old. And Ohio State had this program.
Yeah.
So it's funny how things fall in place if you're not worried about yourself. What's the potential here? What's the potential here?
Yeah, and it's a good lesson again for our viewers and listeners, because I've said many times about traveler, I call it traveler marketability, that every assignment's an opportunity for you to increase your career, to learn something, to take away. A lot of these facilities don't necessarily want to hear a traveler's opinion of how they saw it done better another way. We've openly discussed that on this series. That it's, you know, you kind of sometimes have to kind of bite your lip and just kind of listen, unless the opportunity is given to you and someone literally comes out and said, hey, you know, what did you guys do, or what have you seen, which I think is rare. But you still can take away anything. I've said before, I don't care if it's a trick, you know, nurses especially, and people in imaging, they all have tricks that they've learned on things that make patient care easier, whether it's for them, the facility, or oftentimes, and more often than not, for the patient themselves. They've learned something and they can share that with other you know, nurses and CNAs and LPNs and people that are along for the ride. And it notches their career and their I think satisfaction up. I mean, at the end of these men and women's career, I think it's great for them to be able to say, look at what I was able to accomplish, not only for myself but for other people as well. And again, it's being happy and oftentimes an unhappy environment, an unhappy world.
Yes. When I first started ministerial training, the teacher said, your first assignment is to go back to work, and at the next meeting that you have at work, change the consciousness of the room. By happiness, by exuberance, by positivity, by being friendly, by saying nice things. And he was right. And so when you know you got that power, oh my gosh, you can do so much with it. We do. We do. And those that don't think they do forgot, because it's really, and happiness is a choice.
Let's talk a little bit about, let's go back to Michael for just a minute. And again, his situation is so extreme compared to what most of us have to deal with. To you, I was able to do a year. What's another month for me? In comparing that to, I mean, again, way less of a situation, but you know, a tough assignment, a bad environment for one of our travelers. These tips that he learned, of course, that you can translate them to any walk of life. He learned that you can get through about anything. And these men and women are thrust sometimes into bad environments. As long as their license isn't in jeopardy, oftentimes it's a hard They're chasing the dollars. They take a high-paying assignment. Oftentimes, that comes for a reason. A lot of times, these assignments pay much because they're not great environments, or that there's a large patient care, or the hospital's not ran very well. But kind of knowing that if you take things one day at a time and you look at some of these 10 things and translate them into maybe a more appropriate form of healthcare, you get through another week. You can get through those 13 weeks of a tough situation. Certainly not being in a hole, but a lot of men and women would compare that to being in a hole sometimes. They dread walking into work some days.
Sure, sure. Well, now what Michael's doing is he's writing a book, because he's been in since he was 19 and he just turned 50. He's writing a book for the newbies, the young guys that come into prison and they're freaked out.
Yeah.
So he's writing about all the different ways to handle it. So he's taking what he has learned and making good use of that. And he still has hope that he'll get out. I don't know. But every 3 years he can apply for parole. And he puts together a profile, his whole portfolio of all the classes he's taken. He's done everything in the prison that they allow him to do, including caring for the anyway, people that are sick. And he's making the best of it. And that's his soul's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And if I discount that and say, poor Michael, I'm no help to him at all.
Yeah.
That's his soul's journey, and he's evolving into it. And we did just publish our 13 years of letters in a book called My Search for Ancient Wisdom, A Prisoner's Journey of Transformation. And I have another prisoner. I have 4 prisoners I write to, and his name is Charles, and he found me through a church ad I put in the newspaper. And he said, I don't have any family. I was abandoned as a child. I was homeless in the Reading area for 15 years. And I only have a 5th grade education. But if you would write to me, I'd love it. And what he thought he had, his father was a Hell's Angel,
Mm-hmm.
and he beat him up a lot. So he thought he had brain damage. But from what he learned in doing artwork, he started using pens to create artwork. What I realized in him is he was seeing the energy in everything and feeling that energy and being able to take it and make gorgeous pieces of art. Charles did the cover of our book because Michael said, here's about what I want.
Yeah.
And he did the cover. It's awesome.
Wow.
And we have 21 pieces of his art in the book.
That's great. That's
And
wow.
let me show you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Whoops. Let me show you one of his pieces that I dearly love. It's on my wall.
Oh gosh.
He uses the stipple method, dots.
Really? So I can't tell from here. Of course, I don't even have my glasses on, but that's
Isn't that amazing?
yeah. And is that the cover, or is that just one of his pieces?
No, that's just one of his pieces that I put on my wall because I dearly
He's
love it.
using are those dots with watercolor almost? It looks like, or is that ink? Is that
No, pen.
It's pen.
Pen. Yeah.
Man, that's good. I can see it.
And in the year we've been corresponding, he hopes to get out next year. And so he's been sending me all his art, and I catalog it and scan it. I've got 264 pieces of his art.
Wow. So is that?
And I've been making cards and selling them and things like that. So he'll have a portfolio and money when he gets out.
That's awesome. Good for you.
So you never know.
No, absolutely
You
not.
never know.
And now this could be something inspirational, to say the very least. And I think what I'm feeling, I mean, just in this episode, I'm kind of going, man, my days aren't so bad. I've never had a period in my life personally just talk about what I'm going through from it. It's been such a roller coaster. But it's rewarding, and this was really helping me to realize that when things are kind of bad, it's about the opportunity. People just remember, just think again about what you already know, and reframe and just pay attention to the messages that are being handed to you instead of ignoring them. Especially in this day and age where it's we've got attention spans that like this.
It is. Another experience I had a lady who wanted to go to our women's retreat. And she said, I can't because I have back pain and I can't sleep in another bed. But I've been praying on it, she said. And I said, tell me what you're saying in your prayer. No more pain. No more pain. no more pain. I said, well, that's the problem. All your subconscious mind is hearing, you're focused on pain. Give her more. My minister used to say it's the Laurel and Hardy way the universe works, because our subconscious mind hears what we're focused on, and it assumes that's what we want more of. It just magnetizes it and brings more to us. One of our people at church who should have known better, I should say, she kept coming to our prayer meetings saying, I'm so scared of driving my car. It's falling apart. I'm really afraid of it. I can't afford a new one. About a month later, she's driving down the street and her car caught on fire, and she got out and watched it burn up.
Oh, man.
And so her insurance company got her another car, and she said, oh my God, I didn't realize how that power of my energy, it's almost, it's mysterious, but the world is listening. The energy in the universe is listening. So we got to pay attention to what we're saying.
Yeah, and to ourselves, about our capabilities. I think the whole conversation here really is about changing your mindset to being, to deciding upward, positive happiness, or the other direction. Which, I mean, we all know there's nothing good that comes out of it except self. What's the word I'm looking for? Deprivation, self-fulfilling prophecy. I knew I wasn't going to have a good day today, and sure enough, I didn't have a good day. I knew it. I was right. That's about the only positive thing that goes. I was right. I was told I was going to have a terrible day, and I did. It's a lot. There's a lot there.
I had a friend who hated her job. She worked for the county, CPS, Child Protective Services, and she hated it. She kept saying,
"Yeah,
I hate my job. I hate my job. I need a break. I need a break." So she was walking in a parking lot, tripped over one of those cement things, and broke her shoulder. So she got her short-term break. Well, about 2 months later, she's still saying, I need a break from this job. She fell and broke her wrist. Okay. And finally she said, tell everyone I didn't change my mind. I didn't change my story. I need a break. Hey, let's do it.
You got a break. You got a couple of them, right? Man.
Yeah.
That's
and
karma. That's the universe telling you a message, I think, right there. Not so subtly, I think.
Right. About 25 years ago, I met my husband, and I was divorced at the time, and I went to a prayer practitioner because my mom had cancer, and she took care of that in a prayer. And then she said, hey, how's your love life? And I said, don't have one, don't need one. And she said, oh, you are neutral about it. You're not grasping for one or shoving one away. And she said, and I'll say this because this is she said, you need a goddammit treatment, a goddammit prayer. That you are so neutral, you are ready for the best person to come along in your life. And 3 weeks later, I met my now soulmate at church. Didn't even know it was. Oh, I'll tell you.
She's quite an influence and sounds like an amazing woman. Growing up with that, I had one too. So that's good. That's important, and that's luck. To have something like that in your life. That's for sure. If you don't have that person in life, you got to become that person. Maybe, I don't know.
It all started so much with my mom when my dad died, and he had a brain tumor and he would just pass out. And so the last time, right, the day he died, the ambulance came to take him to a hospital 2 hours away. So she grabbed her purse and followed the ambulance. And when she got to the hospital, she had picked up my purse with my rock collection in it. So here she was in a big city with no identification and no money, and all she could do was laugh.
She had some good rocks. Did she sell the rocks? No.
Yeah.
Quite the story. Well, I appreciate today. This has been great. I hope that our message kind of came through. And again, you mentioned a couple of books that were influential to you. You've got just the right attitude, and I think it's important. And this is why I wanted to have you on. I just think it was a change of pace of an episode to kind of just get people either thinking or potentially to remind everybody that how do I want to phrase this? Whether things are bad or not, you get to decide. I think is the best answer. You get to decide if things are bad or not. You can look at how bad it is, or you can look at how great
Mm-hmm.
things are right now in the present, and how they're what you're moving toward instead of what you are dealing with around you. So, well, Mary, I appreciate it again. Thanks for taking your time early on a Saturday morning, especially your time with me.
That's all right. Thank you so much. I
I
greatly appreciate it.
absolutely. All right, we will talk to you hopefully here again soon. I got some other thing to get on here in a little while, but too many topics to cover in one day. But thanks for your time, and I appreciate it today.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. Well, there you go. Everything I was wanting to get out in the episode, and then some. So much to talk about, so much to go over. Again, I said it's really early here, and I hope that I did this. I hope I did her guesting justice, because there's a lot there. And like I said earlier before we interviewed her, I really hope that there was something that somebody grabbed and went, I need that today. And I was serious when I said, I believe I said this in the before, that if you're having a tough day, remember, bookmark this episode, download this one if you don't download them all, and save it for a day that you need to be reminded of this. It's not anything that either one of us, I think, said that would be something you probably haven't heard, but just Mary's approach to things, I think, is really unique and needed, I guess. There's not enough people in my life, I can tell you that think like she does. I need more of that, and I hope that somebody out there feels the same way. That there's something, if you're not getting it from your support group or who you're around and who you love and who you're close with, somebody like Dr. Mary Dr. Mitchell. I always do that, doctor in the first name, can kind of be there to help you guys. So I enjoyed that conversation. I know we kind of were all over the place because that's just the way it goes with sometimes during interviews. But there's a lot there, and if you pause each one of those sections and maybe take a break and think about what she said, mostly, obviously, and just gave it some contemplation, I think that would be how I would re-listen to that episode. Listen to her, pause, go away and think about it while you're doing something menial, a task, and come back and listen to another little ditty that she threw out there. I always say there's some gold nuggets in that episode. All of the gold nuggets on today's were from her, and there's some deep stuff there that may not have felt that deep until you really start to, I think, really explore it in your head, which is what I'm doing right now. Because there was a lot of stuff, and I'm actually, I don't listen to a lot of episodes after I record them, because I drive myself nuts. But this one, I think, merits me going back and doing exactly what I'm asking you guys to do, and that is to just kind of think about what she's saying and save these for some days where you're just struggling and you're finding yourself moving into maybe, like she said, maybe into the past. Maybe you're looking forward to what you're hoping is going to happen instead of being in the here and now in the present. That's a pretty good visual that she explained, for sure. So, guys, as always, excuse me, throat's cracking this morning. As always, I appreciate it. I can't thank you enough for tuning in. We've got a lot of really cool episodes coming up. Some getting back to some meat and potatoes, so to speak, with being insurance and how to starting your own LLC. All kinds of episodes I think are going to prove to be something you're not going to hear anywhere else. That's for sure. So please tell all your other fellow travelers about us. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time on Travel Evolved.